The heart sets us apart. It beats and ticks, and over the years it's taken a few licks. But your heart doesn't just beat for you, it beats for your friends and family and your grandson Drew. So let's make it stronger, 'cause a healthy heart loves longer.
Every heart deserves a specialist. Find yours at Dignity Health St. Rose Dominican Hospitals. Hello, human kindness.
Nevadans are battle-born, but lately we've been tested like never before. So when COVID came to Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto went to work. She got loans for small businesses that saved 500,000 Nevada jobs and worked with President Biden to provide stimulus checks and tax cuts. Senator Cortez Masto got new funding to keep Nevada's first responders on the job, too. Call Senator Cortez Masto at 202-224-3542 and tell her to keep delivering relief for Nevada. Paid for by Majority Forward.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 445. What's up, everybody, and greetings from an overcast and kind of chilly Sin City. Hope you're all having a fantastic Monday. Ghislaine Maxwell was in front of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals today, arguing for her bail. Now, Judge Nathan has slapped her with 3 L's already in regards to this same very ask, and now Maxwell has accelerated it up to the appeals court. So the appeals court heard from her today, heard from her lawyers today, and they will make their decision one way or the other as far as bail goes at sometime in the near future, I would guess. These decisions by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals have been coming relatively quickly in this Epstein case, as opposed to that 11th Circuit Court of Appeals nonsense that we waited on forever. These seem to be moving in a much more timely fashion. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell really has not found too much empathy with Judge Nathan. Judge Nathan has really not bought into the whole shtick that has been put forward by Maxwell's lawyers. It seemed to be a little bit more of a listening ear today with some of the other judges. Now, I don't think that the Second Court of Appeals is going to grant her bail, but I do think that they might make the government and the Department of Prisons, the Bureau of Prisons, maybe adjust the way that they're handling Maxwell. Like, for instance, her still being on suicide watch. I could see how the appeals court could decide against that and make them adjust, right? And that's what the system is for. That's what this the appeals process is for. To go through all of this stuff and figure out what's what. And then a court ruling will come down, and that will be that. But if she is not suicidal, then I tend to agree that she should not be on suicide watch. She should be put into whatever sort of holding that they kept people like El Chapo in, or El Chapo's wife. Those sorts of situations, it should mimic that situation. I want Maxwell to be treated like a regular person, no more, no less. Just like anybody else within the system. I have cried for that from the rooftops, and I sometimes I feel like there's a lot of deaf ears out there that don't understand. For me especially, I don't speak for anybody else, remember that, folks, but for me, I want this damn system to be fair. I know, it's a pipe dream. It is so ridiculous to think that the system's ever going to be fair that it's laughable, right? But I'm not just going to sit down and take it in the shorts by these people anymore. I'm not just going to sit down and say, oh yeah, it's cool, just railroad us. Just go ahead and let the men of always do whatever they want to the rest of us. If other people want to do that and take it sitting down, that's fine. But I've been provided with this bit of a platform here. Not huge by any means of the imagination compared to other people and the platforms that they have. But this little platform that I've been provided, you better believe that I will call out government malfeasance at every single step of the way. Remember, folks, the government and their misdeeds and their wrongdoings in this case was what led me into this case in the beginning. My angle was always the government mess up here in the case and how the government was at fault. They held some of the fault with this whole entire fiasco. So you'll never hear me say that I think anyone should be treated harshly in prison, meaning outside of the bounds of the law, right? Whatever the law stipulates, whatever the law says that the prison system can do, then that's the rules I want them to follow. With that said, I don't like those rules either. I think that the whole system is broken. I think the whole system is corrupt. And I think the fact that so many people go to jail, get out, and then go back tells you the story. We need to start rehabilitating people in prison, offering trade school for people in prison. And then when people get out of prison, after they've paid their debt to society, it shouldn't be this uphill climb to find employment and to become a part of society again, to reintegrate into society. But the system's set up for those very people, poor people, by the way, victims of the war on drugs mostly, to keep going back and going through the system because it's a for-profit prison system. Let's just call it what it is, right? Let's not BS around it. Let's not pull punches. It is what it is. It's a for-profit system. And the youth of America, who are caught up in the drug war, which is illegal, by the way, are the ones that keep going in and out through the revolving door. But we got Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team up here, 3 different bail attempts, now in front of the appeals judges, still screaming about how the system is broken in favor of other people and not her? She is the poster child for the system working for people like her and against people like us. Again, the men and the women of always. I'm so tired of them. I mean, it's just the whole narrative from all of these rich people, from Harvey Weinstein to Jeffrey Epstein to Raniere to all of them. I'm tired of all of their narratives. I'm tired of their BS. And I'm tired of them getting preferential treatment. Because if the Suck Squad thinks Maxwell has it bad in prison, boy oh boy, wait until you hear from some of my upcoming guests for the new podcast. They're going to tell you what life in prison is really like for normal folk. All right, so let's jump into our article for tonight. And like usual, when it comes to a situation like this, I prefer to use an article from a place like Law and Crime and from somebody like Adam Klasfeld. Now, I've talked about Adam several times in the past. He really gives a good accounting of what's going on. He understands how the legal system works, and he puts it into words that are easy to understand for the layman, right? So that's why I like to prefer, I like to use articles from Law and Crime when we're talking about situations like this. So let's jump into this article by Adam Klasfeld, and let's see what he has to say about Maxwell's hearing in front of the Second Circuit judges today. Headline: Second Circuit judges question putting Ghislaine Maxwell on suicide watch in appeal of detention orders. This article, like I said, was authored by Adam Klasfeld. And I tend to agree with that almost, right? I know. Very rare that you're going to hear me say I agree with the Suck Squad. But if she is not suicidal, then she shouldn't be on suicide watch. There has to be some other heightened state of alert that the guards can be on, right, for high-profile criminals. That's what we have at these kinds of jails. El Chapo types, Jeffrey Epstein's, on and on and on and on. So there has to be some other heightened sense of security where she can slide into that as opposed to the whole on suicide. Because if she's not suicidal, then I agree that she shouldn't be on suicide watch. That doesn't make sense, right? Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers tried and failed 3 times in federal court to release their client before trial. Those attorneys appeared to find a more receptive audience before the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit on Monday morning, where a 3-judge panel grilled the government about whether keeping the accused sex trafficker on suicide watch interfered with her trial preparations. So the 3-judge panel was a lot more receptive. There is no doubt about that. And not so much about the detention portion, but the suicide portion was the sticking point for them as far as keeping her on suicide watch. And I tend to agree with that train of thought, honestly. There's no reason to keep her on suicide watch if she is not suicidal. I agree with that. So, put her where high-profile criminals go. Wherever rung in the system that is, put her there, but with heightened security. That way, this is not even an argument that they can make. You see what they do here, folks? They're not talking about the bail or how she's not a flight risk or anything like that, right? It's always the technicalities. It's always the loopholes. Not my client is innocent. Well, they know they have no leg to stand on there. So it's always the technicalities and the loopholes and this sort of stuff. Well, they put her on suicide watch and she's not suicidal. I agree. If she's not suicidal, she should be taken off. But with that said, if something, God forbid, happens to her and she's not on suicide watch, then what? Who's going to be blamed? So it is a bit of a catch-22 for the government, no doubt about it. She's kept up at night every 15 minutes with light shining in her eyes so that they can check her breathing, Maxwell's attorney, David Marcus, told the judges. They're doing it because Jeffrey Epstein died on their watch. And again, she's not Jeffrey Epstein, Marcus added later. No, she's not Jeffrey Epstein, Marcus. She's his co-conspirator, co-boss, and somebody who is partaking in the abuse as alleged by the survivors themselves. So she is also a high-profile prisoner and somebody who should be handled in the correct manner. And the correct manner is not putting her in a jail cell with somebody like, Mr. Tartaglione. Probably not the best idea, right? So Maxwell should definitely be kept by herself. She should definitely be kept in solitary confinement. But the suicide protocols, I think that those could probably be eased, right? She's not suicidal. And at this point, her lawyers are making such a stink about this that if something, God forbid, does happen to Maxwell, then, they would have to shoulder the blame here, right? It would be on them. So I hope the Suck Squad's prepared to do that. Epstein's death in Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center has shadowed Maxwell's related prosecution since its inception last July. The Bureau of Prisons sent Maxwell to a facility across the river from where Epstein was housed, Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. Well, where else are they supposed to send her? I mean, I guess they could send her to a bunch of other federal jails, but considering she's facing these charges in the Southern District of New York, I think it makes sense to put her in one of these jails, right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense to put her in a jail in, say, California and fly her to New York for trial. So where else is she supposed to go? I mean, I don't understand what the problem is here. Are they trying to say that they put her there to intimidate her further? It's kind of ridiculous for them to use that as a line of contention. The medical examiner's ruling that Epstein killed himself sparked criticism about why prison officials removed him from suicide watch status shortly before his death. Not only that, hold on, let's go all the way back to the suicide, or alleged suicide. Why was nobody who showed up to that jail cell wearing a camera? Why were there no cameras on the cell? Why wasn't the jail cell treated like a crime scene? Why was Epstein moved before pictures were taken? Every single death that occurs in the prison is acted on as if it was a murder or suspicious, and there's a crime scene and an investigation. But in this case, none of that happened, huh? He just happened to get moved out, and we just happened to get a post on Reddit about Epstein prior to the news even talking about it. The whole entire situation stinks, okay? So yeah, it should spark criticism with their nonsense narrative. Oh, Epstein killed himself with no evidence provided. Just a week after her arrest, the Bureau of Prisons reportedly put Maxwell on suicide watch, and prison officials have kept her under varying degrees of restriction ever since. Now again, look, if she's not suicidal, folks, let me be very clear. I actually agree with her lawyers, the Suck Squad, in this regard. If she's not suicidal, then she should not be on suicide watch. Pretty simple. But also what that means is you saying that she's not suicidal, and then if something happens to her, like it did with Epstein, I don't want to hear any nonsense. Oh, well, she was suicidal and she committed suicide, like you tried with Epstein. That's the BS they tried with Epstein, remember? For Circuit Judge Pierre Laval, the decision was understandable, but perhaps questionable. One of the main complaints in the defendant's brief is that she's being improperly treated as a suicide risk in a manner that makes her life hell and doesn't allow her to sleep, Laval, a Clinton appointee, summarized. So this judge is saying that he sort of feels a bit of compassion in that regard, right? Saying, look, I get it. She's on suicide watch. This is the main point of contention, according to this judge, that's being brought forward by the lawyers of Ghislaine Maxwell, is the suicide situation. So let's alleviate that. Let's take her off suicide watch. But remember, that takes the narrative right off of the table of her being suicidal in the event of something happening to her. So pick your poison here, folks. Pointing out that Maxwell's lawyers argue that this has affected trial preparations, Laval added. They say there's no reason for it except for the fact that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Allegedly. The Bureau of Prisons doesn't want to risk another embarrassment to itself, which is understandable in the part of the Bureau of Prisons, but it's perhaps unnecessary. And again, I tend to agree. As long as there's other parameters in place for a high-profile inmate, then let's get her off of suicide watch. Okay, she's not suicidal. Fine, let's take her off suicide watch. But remember this article. Remember this conversation. If something, God forbid, does happen to her. I do not want to hear anyone pumping the narrative that, oh, well, she was suicidal and everybody knew it. No, that's not the case. And all the facts are right here, folks. So, let's see. You want to take her off suicide watch? I actually agree. She shouldn't be on suicide watch if she is not suicidal. So, let's get her off of suicide watch and let's keep the party, let's keep the train moving, right?
Nevadans are battle-born, but lately we've been tested like never before. So when COVID came to Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto went to work. She got loans for small businesses that saved 500,000 Nevada jobs and worked with President Biden to provide stimulus checks and tax cuts. Senator Cortez Masto got new funding to keep Nevada's first responders on the job, too. Call Senator Cortez Masto at 202-224-3542 and tell her to keep delivering relief for Nevada. Paid for by Majority Forward.
Circuit Judge Richard Dick Sullivan, a Donald Trump appointee, sounded incredulous when Assistant U.S. Attorney Laura Pomerantz the conditions imposed on Maxwell routine. Everybody, they do that to all the inmates, Sullivan asked. And as much as I think Richard Sullivan is living up to his name of Dick most times, he's not wrong in this regard. Again, folks, it has to be fair across the board, okay? Nobody gets anything more, nobody gets anything less. That's my stance, my personal stance on this. Now, I know there's some people out there that are going to say, well, Maxwell should be treated worse than other inmates because of her crimes. And look, I get it. I understand the anger. But I try not to let myself fall into that kind of thinking. Because at the end of the day, I want either the system in place to be utterly revamped and refurbished, or I want it to be torn down and fixed so it is fair. So I'm not going to play favorites here and say, well, I like the system being broken and not working correctly because it fits my narrative. No, I'm never going to do that. The system is broken and destroyed and gross, and the Bureau of Prisons is broken, disgusting, and gross. So I agree, actually. If she is not suicidal, fine. Off of suicide watch. But there has to be those other parameters in place if that's the route they go. Because for sure, God forbid she gets off of suicide watch and something happens to her, they're going to say right away, oh, well, she's suicidal. What the hell was she taken off of suicide watch for? Her lawyers are going to try and move the goalposts and act like they've been ringing the bell of alarm this whole time. So let's get it on the record here and documented here. If they take her off of suicide watch, then that's on them. And I don't want to hear any BS from them if, God forbid, something goes south. Regardless of the panel's findings about whether suicide risk status was reasonable, Maxwell may have a tough hill to climb. U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan, who was presiding over Maxwell's case, rejected 3 separate bail applications on the grounds that the accused sex trafficker is a risk of flight and a danger to the community. And that's really what it comes down to, right? The appeals court might admonish them about suicide watch here, meaning the government, but that's not going to be enough to push the needle. They're going to need more than that for Maxwell to get bailed out. Now, I would not be shocked if there's some changes to her incarceration, meaning perhaps not on suicide watch anymore, or the light shining in her room, or whatever the hell. But as far as using that to bail her out, yeah, you're going to have to come a little harder than that, I think, Suck Squad. The risks are simply too great, Nathan declared at the first hearing, never wavering from that finding through 2 separate challenges. In order to overturn that finding, the Second Circuit would have to find the judge made a clear error in those determinations, which is a high bar. Notice it says nothing about suicide watch, making a determination there, or that could be the thing that gets her out. That's not the case, all right? It would have to be an error in the way Nathan made her ruling for the appeals court to act. And from where I'm sitting, in the peanut gallery, no doubt, I don't see something that would be considered that, right? The judge repeatedly justified those findings on the grounds that the British heiress, alleged co-conspirator, general all-around scuzzbag, the daughter of the late media mogul Robert Maxwell, kept changing the estimates of her undisclosed and murky assets and could flee to the United Kingdom or France, where she is a citizen. Maxwell's offer to renounce her citizenship in those countries did not change Nathan's view. Well, it shouldn't have. And we discussed why. You can't just renounce your citizenship in France. There's a process. Now, the English citizenship, I'm sure that's a little bit easier. But the French one? Nice try, Ghislaine, but everybody has access to this information these days. So you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes with your BS narratives, Suck Squad. Late last month, a grand jury added 2 sex trafficking counts that can land Maxwell an effective life sentence, and her defense team argued this amplifies the stakes of the bail battle. Well, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Pretty rough when your client's facing these kinds of charges. And if you guys are panicking like this, I can only imagine what would happen if you were being treated like anybody else would be treated and hit with RICO. We haven't even talked about that yet. You talk about how bad you have it in jail? Please, give me a break. You're not even facing RICO right now like you should be, or the Mann Act. So what do you mean? If this was anybody else, look at R. Kelly. R. Kelly gets RICO, but Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't? Okay. We just want a fair opportunity, a fair chance, so that she can get ready for the trial of her life, Marcus said. The government has said that it wants to put her in jail for the rest of her life, and yet she can't even meet with counsel? She's stuck trying to prepare for trial over a video screen like this. Yeah, like everybody else in the COVID era. So should they just let everybody out of jail that can't meet with their lawyer face to face? This guy's an absolute tool. Holy cow. I mean, wow. This is somebody that people actually like search out for legal advice? I mean, you might as well go to Ben Askren and ask him to teach you how to box. Federal court proceedings have been conducted largely virtually over the length of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has been the general rule of Maxwell's court appearance, save for the last week in court when Maxwell demanded to appear in court to plead not guilty to her new charges. And she got her shot. She came in. She pled not guilty. People got a look, and things keep on moving. So I would prefer all of this to be done in person as well. Pretty sure that everybody involved has their COVID vaccination. So let's get this trial in court, in person, so Maxwell and the Suck Squad have to face these survivors and these witnesses head on in person. It's one thing to demean them in the papers. It's one thing to say they're on a paper chase. It's another thing to have to look them in their eyes. Circuit Judge Raymond Lohier, the final member of the panel and a Barack Obama appointee, questioned whether there was anything unique about Maxwell's complaints about the challenges of preparing for trial behind bars in the age of coronavirus that does not affect the other inmates. No shit, right? So what, she gets special treatment, but Joe Blow down the block who got caught with, $150 of crack rock, he's finished. He shouldn't get the same treatment, though. That's why it's laughable when to use this defense with Maxwell is just so laughable to me that I can't even put it into words. The panel reserved decision on Maxwell's request. She is currently scheduled to stand trial on July 12th. So we'll have to see, right, what the Second Court of Appeals has to say. But my guess would be something will be done about Suicide Watch, but she will not get the request of being bailed out. That's my guess right now. That's what I think's going to happen. And I guess we'll just have to see how all of this plays out. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI @protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see what this ridiculous case has in store.
Imagine an ER waiting room with your favorite blanket and pillow, your cat's Pixel and Widget, and your mom's chicken soup. At Dignity Health, we know the only thing worse than being in pain is being stuck in an ER waiting room. So we offer In Quicker. You get an estimated ER arrival time online so you can start your wait at home. It's just another way of putting leading-edge medicine within easy reach. Learn more at strosehospitals.org/ER. Dignity Health, including St. Rose Dominicans, Rose de Lima, San Martin, and Siena campuses in Henderson and Las Vegas. Hello, human kindness.
Nevadans are battle-born, but lately we've been tested like never before. So when COVID came to Nevada, Senator Cortez Masto went to work. She got loans for small businesses that saved 500,000 Nevada jobs and worked with President Biden to provide stimulus checks and tax cuts. Senator Cortez Masto got new funding to keep Nevada's first responders on the job, too. Call Senator Cortez Masto at 202-224-3542 and tell her to keep delivering relief for Nevada. Paid for by Majority Forward.